Welcome to Busy Center launch event and our session about what is new about VAT Date in Busy Center, where my colleague Predrag and Magnus, together with me, will try to explain all new features related with this topic, but also to clarify some of them. We will first start with reminding why and how we started with this feature and continue with some setup and expected results based on this setup. Then we will continue with showing how to use this feature in practice, but also some development aspects of this feature. We will also introduce something you asked, and now we are planning to deliver, redesign of VAT date range, as many of you wanted it to separate from posting date range. And we will also touch topic about possible changing of VAT date after posting. Okay, let's start. First, to remind how we started, this is requirement from BC Ideas. Idea basically was not to use all the time posting date for VAT purpose, that we can choose a document date, and based on all this requirement, we decided to introduce new field VAT date. Okay, a roadmap was that we started with 2022 release wave 2 or version 21, and this is the moment when we added these to production. On the first minor, we made some update, adding VAT return limitation. And after that, based on your feedback, especially from directions, Yammer, we introducing few new features, limitations, and some bug fixes. So we continue with upgrading and adding small improvements based on all existing feedbacks and internal findings in the last 5 to 6 months. And now, finally, with version 23, we, as I said, we listen to your feedback, and you require to change the setup, not to use a general ledger setup for allow from to posting. We decided to move this to a VAT allow from posting. It will come in next 2 minors, not immediately in October, but this is definitely in our close roadmap. Let's remind you about basic things of involving these new fields to the entries. In preparation for 2022 release wave 2, Microsoft ran upgrade code to populate VAT date in existing entries with a posting date. We did that because the VAT date wasn't previously used in VAT reporting, so data transfer was used the first time to populate this data. Now, what is important here? This feature is W1 feature, so it means it is available in all, actually in most of countries where Busy Central is available, except Italy, as Italy already had similar feature there, so in Italy it is postponed a bit. In all those countries with existing VAT functionality, this field is named as VAT date. But what is important to know, in localization without VAT system, this field still exists, and this date is referred to as tax date. The tax date automatically uses the posting date on a document, so it must have date even customers do not see it. That means you will not see it, but system will automatically fill in this tax date based on your posting date. Okay, let's now make a look at the setup and results expected based on different setup models. First, VAT date usage. To use VAT date feature, the first step is to choose Enable in a VAT date usage field on a General Ledger setup page. Enabling VAT date usage field makes VAT date field available in all relevant page. It means in document page, in entries, everywhere. It is important to know that except Enable, there are 2 other options for this field. All those options will not block the use of VAT date. These 2 other options are, except Enable, we now have Enable Prevent Modification option, which prevents user from modifying VAT date after document has been posted. That means this is more or less the same. You are enable feature, but if this is only enabled, you can do everything. You can change even date after posting. But if you have this prevent modification, you will have everything except possibility to change VAT date in the posting documents. And this is enabled by default. This exists especially because in some countries it is not allowed to modify VAT date after document has been posted. Then disable, which hides all instances of VAT date across the application. But what is important to remember? VAT date will still be used and automatically populated with posting date. It means if you choose disable, it will not be disabled as a feature. You will just not see VAT date field across the application. But system will use posting date by default. In general, there will not be difference because previously used all these VAT reports based on posting date. Now you will use based on VAT date, but this VAT date will be exactly the same as a posting date. Note that these options aren't available in the country versions where VAT is not used, and system will use posting date as default date in tax date field. What it means, in general, you will not see this feature to enable or disable, but this feature will be disabled automatically and system will populate the tax date with posting date. What is additionally important here, if the feature is enabled, you can enter the VAT date on a relevant page. But however, if left empty, it will be populated with default date. You will see later in some examples. Now, default date. The default VAT date field defines whether the posting date or document date are used as a default value. Again, we are talking only about default date as it can be changed in non-posting documents. And it will have an impact about some posting as well. And as I said, you will see it later. And now, if you use VAT periods in Business Central, the control VAT period setup field controls whether to check and potentially block posting in VAT date is defined within closed periods. In those cases, the following happens. This is because these settings ensure consistency in VAT reporting and prevent posting documents with an empty VAT date. But with this control, you can prevent or eventually warning having new posting entries within closed or and release VAT period. And of course, you can disable this setup at all if you do not use VAT periods. Now, my colleague Magnus will show you how to use this feature in a practice and the list of available reports where VAT date appears. Magnus?
Thank you, Alexander. So let's take a brief moment to have an overview of how VAT date works in Business Central. So as Alexander nicely explained, we have on the general ledger setup default VAT date field, which controls whether VAT date should default to posting date or document date. And this is used to auto-populate the field on a document that you might create. If you want, you can of course edit VAT date if needed. And then when posting, we copy the date onto the posted document and the related entries such as VAT entries and GL entries. Let's look at what happens in case that the VAT date is not populated. During the posting routine, we will again use the setup from General Ledger setup, the default VAT date, to actually take the posting date and copy onto the VAT date in case this was the setting that you have. And then, as before, this will just be copied onto the posted document. We also updated some VAT-based reports. Among those are the VAT statement, the calculate and post VAT settlement, VAT vice declaration, and many more in both W1 and local reports. The important thing to note here is that with the default setup in the system, there are not going to be any changes to these reports or their output. Posting date and VAT date will be the same, and it's only in the case that you manually edit VAT date on a document or change the setup that these reports might produce different results. And now I will hand it over to my colleague Product, who will go more in detail with VAT.
Thank you, Magnus. We saw how to enable and set up VAT date in Business Central that can be used for VAT-related reports. This report summarizes VAT-related transactions and assists users in complying with local tax regulation. To ensure that the reports are accurate, we needed to guarantee that transactions are correctly filtered in these reports based on their VAT dates. This brings us to the VAT date consistency check that we implemented in the posting procedure. We defined 3 checks. The first one is about define a default VAT date if it is empty. The second one is to ensure that VAT date is within allowed VAT posting data range. And third one is to ensure that VAT date is within not closed VAT return periods. I will try to explain the reasons for introducing those and how they are implemented in the next few minutes. This is an overview of how the posting process works in regard to VAT date. Our approach was to design it on that way to provide high level of flexibility for partners to set it up, while also considering different localization aspects. In the first step, for every document type, we check whether VAT date is defined. While it is impossible to post, issue, or release document with a blank VAT date from user interface, there is possibility to do that using APIs. Therefore, we introduce this check, and if the VAT is blank, BC will default it according to the general ledger setup. Next, we have VAT allowed periods, and if the VAT date falls outside of defined period, posting procedure would be aborted. Finally, we need to ensure that no new postings are completed within closed VAT return periods or provide warning in cases when VAT period is released or submitted. I would like to take a few minutes to clarify how we handle defaulting the VAT date. Many users express the expectation that setting the field VAT date usage to disabled would prevent its usage entirely. However, it is crucial to understand that VAT date is from compliance standpoint indispensable and cannot be disabled. VAT date should be considered as a tax date, and it is used in all localization primarily for reporting purposes. Given this significance of VAT date, we have taken steps to ensure that every code path involved in posting procedure includes check for the VAT date. On this slide, you can see simple procedure that is implemented in the code units above. In cases where VAT date is left blank, we have implemented a mechanism to default it to the value defined in the GL setup. This ensures that compliance requirements are consistently met and there are no gaps in the handling of the VAT date. Let's now take a look on allowed VAT date periods. Following the similar principle from implementing allowed posting dates in general ledger setup, we implemented similar functionality for VAT date. The idea is to allow administrators to define periods of time during which specified users are able to post. The code here is simple. We use isHandle pattern to allow partners to change behavior and then verify VAT date. What is important also to mention that in the initial version, we used existing fields allowed posting from and allowed posting to from the general ledger setup to verify VAT date to. Based on your feedback, we decided to split it in the version 23. It will be released in one of minor versions. So now we have the same fields used to check VAT date, only defined in VAT setup. How it will work. To ensure seamless transition for our current users, the upgrade code will copy the existing values from the general ledger setup to the VAT setup fields. The existing posting date check remains unchanged, but we are enhancing flexibility in VAT date control, as these fields will be exclusively used for verifying VAT date. Finally, our priority is to prevent any new posting with a VAT date within closed VAT return periods, or in cases where the VAT return is released or submitted, issue a warning. The VAT return can have various statuses from open, accepted, closed to cancelled, and our aim here is to protect users from posting documents that would result with non-compliant situation that would require additional effort to fix the problem. Using general ledger setup field control VAT date, it is possible to handle these cases from blocking posting, providing warning to ignore it. With that, I will pass to Magnus, who will continue explaining how you can modify VAT date after posting the documents.
Thank you, Pradek. All right, so let's take a look at if you might need to change VAT date after having posted a document. We allow you to do this from the VAT entries, where you can go to a record and specify a new VAT date, but only if your setup allows you to do so, as nicely explained by Alexander. Once saved, this date will then be propagated to posted document as well as related GL entries based on transaction number, document type, and posting date. And now I will hand it off to Alexander to conclude this session.
Okay, Magnus, thank you. And yeah, we finished this session for today. I would like to say thank you for all of you who are watching this session, and I would like to invite you for Q&A session. Q&A session is planned for October 11. You will find more information on a portal, so you are more than welcome to ask more questions about these features. Before I finish with this session, I would like to invite you for some other sessions, and all of them, if I'm not wrong, 35 of them are there, and all of them are really good about new features. But I would like to take this opportunity to invite you something more related with localization and legislation topics, what is new in legislation and localization, and again, something really important for the most of countries, introduction to new electronic invoicing or electronic document module. This is something really important and it will be used much more in the future. Before I close, again, there are a lot of interesting and important URLs about Business Central, so you can use some of them to find interesting information. If you cannot remember all of them, please do not forget this AKMSBC all, so you can find all the interesting information there. So, on the end, thank you in mine and Prednag and Magnus' name.